So in this video we're going to be looking at how to make battery cables. First thing we'll do is take a look at the tools we're going to need to do the job. So the first thing we're going to need is a good quality vise. We're going to use that for crimping our terminals onto the cable. Also need some battery cable. This is the smaller gauge of cable, but it also comes in larger gauges which you may need depending on your setup. We'll need some side cutters for cutting the cable to length. We'll need a knife for removing the insulation from the cable. And as we're going to solder and crimp, we'll need some flux paste for the soldering. And of course we'll need some solder. Need a gas torch. And terminal fittings for the ends of the cable. Make sure you get the right ones for the size of cable that you'll be using. So the first things we need to do is measure how far into the terminal the cable is going to go. Make sure you leave a bit of extra room after the terminal so that you can fit the solder into the terminal after crimping. When removing the insulation, be careful not to cut too deep so as not to cut the copper core. And with the insulation removed, you should get bright copper like this. If it's dull or frayed, then cut it back to nice clean bright copper to make sure you get a good connection. So our next step is to prep the copper by dipping it into the flux and then fit the terminal over the end. We're then going to use the vise to crimp the terminal onto the cable. So put it into the vise and crush the terminal with the vise. Loosen, flip the cable round and put it back in to crimp from the other side. You should then have a good mechanical connection and not be able to pull the terminal from the cable. You could call it job done at this point, but soldering is a belt and braces approach and it's worthwhile to make sure you have a solid connection. So put the cable into the vise just to support it. Use the gas torch to heat the end of the terminal and feed the solder in from the gap in between the insulation and the terminal. With the soldering complete, remember that the terminal will be very hot at this point, so let it cool down before cleaning up the terminal and fitting heat shrink. Now that everything is cooled down, select a suitable sized piece of heat shrink, slide it over the end and heat with a heat gun or hairdryer. Now just repeat for the other end of your cable and you'll have a good quality battery cable.